resilient agri-food systems through an evidence-based decision-making approach. From data to information, from information to decision-making, from decision-making to decision-taking. I must say, we have an outstanding panel of experts, policymakers, funders, farmers who will share with us outcomes and learnings of regenerative agricultural frameworks and reflections on the actual transition experiences in Africa, but also in other countries and regions of the world. We do find ourselves in a race against time. We need to guarantee food security, and with less than 7 years left to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations 2030 Agenda, we must be committed to shifting our paradigms. A paradigm from solving yesterday's problems tomorrow to collectively solve tomorrow's problems today. And that is going to require, for all of us, to think differently, to act differently, and to adjust our mental models. Recovery efforts following the multiple system shocks include regeneration of agriculture and requires action to accelerate that transition to resilience and inclusive food systems. And therefore, I want to highlight the three pillars that the organizers of the Africa Food System Forum have rightfully identified to develop solutions that Africa needs to achieve zero hunger. It's about recovery, but also about identifying and resolving the deep root causes of what is underpinning that system that is receiving those multiple shocks. Therefore, in this event, we will focus more on the regeneration part of the action pillars to offer proven and reliable solutions for transforming Africa's food systems. It should help us to overcome the ongoing food security crisis, but also invites us to shift that mental paradigm and mental model. 4 objectives, and I will check in with you at the end of the panel if we actually achieved those 4 objectives. To define and prioritize regenerative agricultural approaches, to identify the key researchable issues around the intended outcomes and impacts by gathering compelling evidence and enabling transition from current practices, to multiply experiences and data sharing on regenerative agriculture, and to increase policy and decision makers' awareness. We also want to learn from you. There's a bit of collective brain power here in the room. So we will be asking you some questions to Slido. Those of you not familiar with Slido, it basically means you put slido.com in your phone and use the code 1001361, or those more technology savvy than I am, just use your camera and scan the QR code, and you will be able to answer some of the questions online. So let's do a tryout of that. Can you all grab your phones? If you still have a BlackBerry like I did a month ago, you can just jump this exercise. All the others, iPhone, all the other phones should not be an issue. And so the question that should pop up here is, what does regenerative agriculture mean to you personally? So personally, what does regenerative agriculture mean to you? You should be able, we have 5 participants. There should be more non-BlackBerry users than 7 in the room. And maybe we can see some of the answers on the screen to inspire. Better food systems, improving economic and environmental conditions simultaneously. It's already an interesting one for Her Excellency on the policy side. Transformation and sustainability. Soil healthier after harvest. And I heard somebody saying this morning, it is biology when we talk about soils. But I will not catch your one-liner. You can complement the missing word. Practices of agriculture that maintains or restore the healthy soil, building health, well-being, and resilience. Now it's going fast. You clearly are getting the coffees kicking in. A vague reference to management systems that may be sustainable depending on where and how they are implemented. I think that's a challenge to the panel. food security, sustainable food production systems, building system sustainability, supporting agriculture, better income structure for the farmer, soil health and intercropping, low input, less soil destruction. All right, thank you all for your active participation, and we're going to collect some of this, and we will be coming back with these Slidos to really receive all your input that will be part of the outcome document that will be developed from this session. Now, it is my honor and pleasure to present to you the distinguished panel here today. Allow me to start with Her Excellency Mlewa, Zambia's Director for Policy and Planning, but also the one known for underpinning the Open for Business strategy with an aggressive belief that the transformation of agricultural sector will happen through public-private partnerships. So thanks and a round of applause for Her Excellency. We have Dr. Roy Steiner, of course, the Senior Vice President of the Rockefeller Foundation. And if you haven't heard yet about the periodic table of food, definitely talk to Roy because it's his passion and it is transforming the way we think about transition. Welcome and thanks for joining us. Probably the strongest and most important voice on this panel is the Honorable Farmer from here from Zanzibar, all the way up here from Zanzibar. Madam Hassan, an entrepreneur, youth, and I've been told that your lavender smells especially nice. So thank you for leaving your farm for a moment and come and join us here. We also have Professor Alex Awiti, Senior Agroecology and Policy Advocacy Advisor at the World Agroforestry Center, and a thought provoker and thought leader. So thanks for joining us. Sustainable Agri-Food Systems Program Director at CIMMYT, Seek Snap. Thanks, Seek, for bringing the systems thinking to this panel. Thank you. And last but not least, Dr. Ambulo Ngoma, agriculture economist also at CIMMYT, and very active in several of the on-farm efforts that we're doing. So thanks, Ambulo, for joining us. And with this, I have the pleasure to not saying much anymore and passing on the word to and hand it over to Ambulo. He will talk about the socio-economic evidence of regenerative agriculture. Over to you.
Thank you, Bram. Good morning, good evening, everyone. I think I've already been introduced. My name is Ambulo Ngoma. I am an agricultural economist with CIMMYT. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about the need for evidence in the space of regenerative agriculture. So maybe I'll start my intervention a little bit different and pose the question, why do we need the evidence to start with? You know, part of what came out from the initial question about what is regenerative agriculture, some people were saying regenerative agriculture could help raise farmers' incomes. Regenerative agriculture could give net positive benefits to farmers. So one of the reasons, I think the overarching reason why we need evidence is because farmers are different, their contexts and conditions are different. So we need evidence to help us learn and understand, one, on adoption, what drives adoption, what are the barriers to adoption. And when you think about adoption, it's also, you want to make a distinction between the extent of adoption and the intensity of adoption. Basically meaning, on the extent, you're looking at what proportion of farmers that have been reached with regenerative agriculture, for example, are taking up the practices. In terms of intensity, you're looking at what proportion of the cultivated land is allocated to regenerative agriculture. So that's one reason why we need evidence. And the second reason, I mean, we do what we do so that farmers can be impacted positively, all things being equal, ceteris paribus, as we would say in economics. So we need the evidence for us to be able to assess the impact of our interventions. Because ultimately, whatever innovations that are generated by the international research systems, we want to impact positively the livelihoods of the farmers. And for us to check whether what we're doing is actually working in that regard, we need the data, we need the evidence, and that's one reason why. There's also in the recent past, there's been a lot of emphasis on targeting, improved targeting, what works where. I'm glad to see a lot of my colleagues from CIMIT who are working on spatial targeting, spatial econometrics, trying to understand ex ante what's most suitable and what fits where. For us to do that, again, we need the evidence. The last part, but not the least, of course, on this particular initial points that I wanted to make was to say we need the evidence to inform policy design. We in the research industry are generating evidence to inform policymaking, or what we normally refer to as evidence-based policymaking. We need to flip it and not fall for the temptation of generating evidence that is policy-based. Instead, we need to focus on evidence-based policymaking and not policy-based evidence-making. I don't know if I should continue. I should stop now. I still have a few points, Bram, that I wanted to make.
Go for it.
Okay, thank you. The second part I wanted to highlight. So the first part was about why we need the evidence. The second part was on about the evidence gaps. What sort of evidence gaps are there in the context of regenerative agriculture? There's quite a couple, and I'm going just to highlight a few. And then I'll close off my intervention with a bit of thoughts on the types of evidence we need. So in terms of evidence gaps, I think we still don't understand quite a lot on the economic returns of some of these innovations and interventions, regenerative agriculture included. There's quite a lot of strong evidence on the agronomy side. There's quite a bit of evidence coming up on the socioeconomic side. But I think there's still a lot more gaps around the socioeconomic evidence on regenerative agriculture, and especially taking into account that farmers are different, farmers are heterogeneous. How do the impacts of the different innovations differ for different farmers in different contexts? I think we still have quite some gaps there. We also have been struggling for quite a bit, for those that are familiar with adoption literature, that the uptake in some instances is not as probably as high as would have hoped for. So the question then becomes, what policy options, what policy instruments, what nudges, if you like, can be used to sort of like incentivize and encourage adoption? The other part would be on the cost of transition. So farmers have been farming in some ways for a long time. What does it take for them to transition from their old conventional ways of farming to, for example, regenerative agriculture? I think we need a bit of evidence. And this evidence gaps is across the different levels. So think about field scale, landscape, household level, regional. I can see my colleagues João Silva in the room looking at me when I said landscape level evidence. Let me close off by saying a few points on the types of evidence that would be required to inform learnings around regenerative agriculture. I think one of the things that come to mind is the need for continuous monitoring. And this monitoring could be done periodically. Of course, when you're starting out, you want to start up with a baseline, right? To understand the current status. You begin your interventions, and then you continuously do your monitoring. And then at the end, of course, you do your end line, and then you're able to do your evaluations. One approach that we've tried to use in CIMIT is through household panel surveys. So you interview the same households over a long period of time. That way it allows you to better trace the transitions across the different time periods. And also it allows you, when you're doing your assessments of what drives adoption, your impacts, then you have better capabilities of controlling for a lot of other factors that could have influenced the decisions by farmers. We now have quite a lot of good analytics based on machine learning, artificial intelligence. How can we leverage some of these products and tools, special data products and tools, to better help us with the ex-ante analysis and understanding of where best to target what specific innovations? I think that could be another part. Just to add also on the ex-ante, I talked earlier on about the need to understand what policy levers or policy incentives could be used to increase or nudge adoption. We could fall back on behavioral and experimental economics to help us understand ex-ante the effects of the different policy instruments on the likely adoption of regenerative agriculture. And there are various ways we could do this through, for example, framed field economic experiments, or through the gold standard, the randomized controlled trials, and just to give a few examples. I think, let me drop it at this stage, Bram. So 3 things: why do we need the evidence? What are the evidence gaps, and what are the types of evidence? Let me stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambulo, for that intervention. I think it was a clear statement around evidence-based policy and enabling environment generation. Thank you very much. I think with that, we're going to pull out our phones once again, and there is a next Slido question for us. And this time, I think it is a moving bar that should... what institutional, market, and policy changes are needed to scale regenerative agriculture? What institutional and market and political changes are needed to scale regenerative agriculture? Over to you. And I think the first response really connects to what you were saying. We need evidence-based underpinning of the cost of doing things different, so that requires funds. Then once we have that evidence to support a just transition, just want to highlight there is an important word here: political will, redirect subsidies. So that's the evidence-based policy making instead of, what was it, policy-based evidence making? Policies that promote regenerative agriculture, being farmer feedback driven, as opposed to top down. And this connects to a call to have data from field to village, to landscape, to agroecology, to region, bottom-up approach and decision making. And while the new answers come in, I think this bottom-up approach and decision making is a very nice introduction towards our next speaker. You are the one out there trying to develop the livelihood trajectory of your family by introducing new practices, by generating the food we eat. So we want to hear from you. What does this all mean for you, your family, your business, your entrepreneurship? Over to you.
Asante sana, nashukuru kupata nafasi hii adhimu kwa ajili ya kurepresenti Wazanzibari na kwa ajili kuondosha mindset nzima ya Wazanzibari kuingia katika shughuli nzima ya kilimo. Women and green agriculture in Zanzibar inawezekana sana. Habari za asubuhi, wakubwa shikamooni, wadogo habari zenu.
Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to tell you something about agriculture in Zanzibar. Agriculture in Zanzibar is possible, and women are encouraged to do agriculture.
Kabla ya hapo nitaweza kuelezea background yangu, jinsi gani nilivyoanza kilimo.
I will give you my background on how I started agriculture.
Kilimo nilianza tokea nilipokuwa mdogo sana. Nilianza na bustani za nyumbani. Na kwenda natembea katika bustani za nyumbani, napenda sana. Na pia nilikuwa na ndoto ya kuwa mtunzaji wa maua, lakini nilikuwa sijui maana ya nini kilimo.
I started agriculture when I was still very young by doing it from the home garden, and my dreams were to be a good horticulture farmer. Keeping flowers was one of my interests.
Baada ya hapo nikaweza kuwashauri wazazi wangu. Baba yangu alikuwa ni askari na alikuwa anajishughulisha sana masuala ya kushona. Nikamwambia baba, kwa nini huwezi kuenda nyumbani kule shamba ukanunua mashamba tukaanza tukalima? kutokana na utamaduni wa Zanzibari kwa mwanamke ni ngumu sana kueleweka mwanamke anasema nini kuhusu kilimo.
So I was able to convince my parents. My dad was police, and he was very much interested with the agriculture. So I encouraged him to go and get enough farm for us to do farming activities. And you know, in Zanzibar, it's not easy for a woman to convince, to provide some advices on anything. But I'm happy that my dad was able to agree and accept what I asked him.
Baada ya hapo nikaanza kujiwekeza katika kilimo cha herbs. Nilianza kulima ricola kipande kidogo tu.
Then I started doing herbs farming, and I started with the ricola, just a small garden.
Kutokana na mazingira ya nyumbani, mimi naishi mjini na eneo la shamba liko mbali, ikawa ngumu mimi kuenda pale, ikawa hakuna ubunifu na usimamizi wa vile vitu. Soko lipo, lakini nikashindwa kuendeleza kutokana na bado nilikuwa ni mdogo, nikiwa nina miaka 16.
So by that time the farm was far from where we were living, so it was not easy for me to do the supervision, and most of the crop were not doing well. By that time I was 16 years old.
Nilipomaliza masomo ya form 2 kidato cha pili, nikamshauri baba tuanze kupanda miti endelevu kwa ajili ya kulihifadhi lile eneo lisije likachukuliwa na watu.
Then when I was in form 2, I also advised my dad that we should start planting trees in that farm, because otherwise other people will come and grab that land.
Nilipomaliza hapo form 4, moja kwa moja nikaanza kuhamasisha watu pale vijiji, kwa sababu vijiji viko mbali mbali, ni maeneo makubwa na hakuna watu. Kwa hiyo nikaanza kuhamasisha watu mbalimbali tukae kwa pamoja.
So when I finished form 4, I started mobilizing people to get into agriculture, and we started groups, and I tried to teach them on how to do farming.
Mradi wangu wa kwanza niliopata, nilijaribu tu kuomba kama kujaribu, tunaita zari, kujaribu tu naweza nikapata au sipati. Nilianza na Belgium.
My first
ilikuwa 2012.
In 2000, I started my first project in farming with the Belgium company.
Kwa bahati nzuri, kutokana na ule upekee wa kuielezea ile biashara, niliweza kupata milioni 10.
So I got a grant of 10 million to support me in agriculture activities.
Kwa hiyo ile ikapelekea kusambaza umeme kwetu, kwa sababu mwanzo nilikuwa natumia madumu kubeba. Baba anajaza maji, mimi nabeba madumu, tunamwagilia kwenye maji. Kwa hiyo tukapata umeme ukasaidia kumwagilia.
So I used that money to get electricity close to the farm, so that we can get water, and we can be able to pump water for irrigation and other activities in the farm.
Hapo nikaacha herbs, niliona nikiingia kwenye mboga kama tungule, vitunguu maji, bilingani, nitapata pesa nyingi. Na ni kweli nikaweka drip karibu ya heka 10.
So I was able to install drip irrigation for 10 acres, and I started growing tomatoes and eggplants and other horticulture crops.
Lakini kila tukienda, kutokana na mazingira, ikawa nazidi kushuka chini. Nalima, natumia nguvu kubwa, matatizo mengi ya wadudu, nikaamua kuanza kukaa chini na kujiuliza kulikoni.
So the challenges were, we had many challenges, especially on pests and diseases. So I had to sit down and start rethinking on how I should go about.
Hapo ilipofika 2016 nikajiunga na TAHA. Waliweza kunipa mafunzo kwa kuwaonesha vitu gani ambavyo nataka. Nashukuru niliweza kufika hatua kidogo.
Then in 2006, I joined TAHA, and I was able to get training on agronomic practices, and at least that was where I started doing better in horticulture.
Samahani, sisemei vibaya, lakini tatizo langu lilikuwa pale pale. Vipi nitapunguza gharama katika uzalishaji? Sikuweza kulitatua.
And my biggest challenge was on how should I minimize the cost in agriculture production.
Nikakaa chini tena na kujadili kitu gani na kuweza kufanya tafiti mbalimbali na kuliangalia soko letu nini linahitaji. 2017 kilimo cha mboga mboga na matunda kikawa Zanzibar kimefurika. Matajiri wengi wamelima, kwa hiyo zile gharama zote zikazidi kukata mpaka mtaji.
So in mwaka gani umesema?
2017-18.
In 2017-2018, most of the people who have money realized that horticulture is paying, so they joined the business, and then there was a flooding of all the products in the market, so the prices went down.
Kutokana na hapo nilipata matatizo mengi, kwa sababu tayari nilikuwa nimeweza kukopa kila sehemu kwa ajili ya kukuza mtaji wangu. Nikawa nadaiwa karibu ya deni la milioni 40.
So I had received loans from different institutions, and I had a loan of about 40 million Tanzanian shillings that I could not repay because the prices of my products went down.
Sio baya na msikisikitike, kwa sababu mimi ni mjasiriamali. Kwangu mimi ilikuwa ni njia rahisi ya kupata wazo kubwa. Kwa sababu gani? Kama hujapata matatizo huwezi kufikiria.
But it was a challenge, but for an entrepreneur, that is also encouraged me to find a way of getting out of it.
Nikapata jawabu, lakini tukaingiwa na COVID.
Then when I got an answer, COVID came.
Lakini bado nikaona chance kubwa ya kupita.
But I still survived.
Kilichonifanya nikaanza kukaa chini, nikasema siko professional na ninachokifanyia.
Then I said I'm not professional. I don't know, I don't have knowledge on what I'm doing.
Nikajiunga. Nakumbuka nilikuwa nipo shambani, nilikuwa sitaki tena kusoma, kwa sababu najua tayari nishajiajiri na ajiri watu, niliweza kuajiri karibu ya watu 100. Kwa hiyo nikaona sina haja tena ya kazi kusoma. Nikakaa shambani, nikasikia chuo cha Suza kinatangazia masuala ya ujasiriamali, degree ya entrepreneurship, na muda ulikuwa ushapita, nimebakia siku hii moja. Nikaliacha jembe, nikakosha mikono na miguu, nikaita gari, nikaenda nikajisajili. Mkopo ilikuwa ndo mwisho kufungwa dirisha, na saa 10 sina tena maombi. Nilichokifanya, nikaenda kuomba chuo, hapo nikaenda kuomba mkopo.
Then after realizing that I need to get more knowledge on agriculture, one time I heard about registration of a degree in entrepreneurship at Suza University. So I decided to leave the farm and go to the university, and I went straight forward and apply for the education loan.
Nikasoma muda wa semester moja mwaka mmoja, lakini
I did first semester straight away. Enda.
Semester moja.
First semester.
unatakiwa
you are
lazima uwe
supposed
na
to have innovative
idea
ideas
ambayo
which
itaweza
will
kuishi kwa muda wa
live for
miaka
more than
10
10 years,
na
and it
itakuwa
has to be social responsibility,
na
and it has to be environmentally friendly. This is the principle of entrepreneurship.
Kwangu mimi
To
ikawa
me,
ngumu.
it was very difficult.
Nikaanza
I
kusema
started
nitalima
with
mboga mboga na
farming
matunda.
vegetables and fruits.
Proposal ikacanceliwa.
Proposal was declined. I
Nikaenda tena,
tried to
nikasema
try,
nitafanya
I will do herbs.
Wakanambia,
And when they
herbs
told me,
utafanya
herbs,
nini?
what are you going to do?
Nikaenda
I
katika
told them that I will
masoko
look
mbalimbali,
into the market,
nikaanza
and I decided
mahotelini
to look into the
na
hotels
wateja wale
and
wa
to
supply
the
ambao
suppliers
walikuwa
for the
wanasupply
hotels,
zamani,
which I was
wakanambia
supplying
hiki kitu
before, and they
kinawezekana,
say
lakini kwa
that
Zanzibar,
the only
na
thing you can be
mwanamke
possible in
hutoweza
Zanzibar,
kuzalisha.
and you are not going to be able to do that because we are a woman.
Nikawaambia
I
mimi
told them
nitaweza
I will do that,
na tunaweza.
and we can do that.
Nikaanza kufanya
I
tafiti
started to
kupitia
do
mitandao
research
mbalimbali.
in different
Ya kwanza
networks. The
kuiona
first one, which I
website
saw,
ni
website World Vegetable Center.
Hapo ulikuwa
That
ni mwaka
was
2021.
2021. I decided access the World Vegetable. I asked them and talked to Madame Violata. I told her I have a problem of spices and how I can study about the herbs. And he told me, why do you want that? I told her, because the market needs that. Zanzibar, we are determining on mainland to bring to Zanzibar. So there is an opportunity. I want to make a revolution, herbs in Zanzibar. She told me, what you are selling me is possible. Yes. Can they grow in your place? If they can grow in the Tanzania mainland, and that Zanzibar is part of the mainland, I believe they can grow. I said, she told me to come. I did not tell her that I'm pregnant, and I was 9 months pregnant. That time, it taken an opportunity. My father is a soldier and a sports person. It was an opportunity for them to go to Arusha. And that time, it was talking 2 weeks before giving birth. The first week, then I gave birth. So at that time, my father went to Arusha. Within the 3 weeks, I was 2 weeks of a child. I saw that's an opportunity, and I have the child. I will tell them that I have a child of 2 weeks old. It was very difficult for World Veg to agree me to convince them that bread and Violata. Then I convinced them that I can come. I went there. I pay my travel cost. We will see what we can do. I went there for good chance. There was a session which was going on. I went and joined into the session. We go to training. One day, the next day, they told me, go. They gave me a sample of each herbs, one seedlings,
thyme moja, lemon verbano moja, sage moja, lavender moja, na thymes zile ziko
all
tatu,
those in
moja moja,
one
na
species of that, and
Nikabeba.
oregano. I take them.
Nilipozibeba,
When I
nikaja
take them
kuziweka nyumbani.
to home,
Baada ya miezi sita,
after
zile
6
vitu
months,
zikafanya vizuri.
everything was doing
Kila
very
baada ya
well.
miezi mitatu
After
nachukua
6
record.
months, every 3 months I take
Huku na
records.
mimi nikaanza
At the
kufanya
same time,
mobilization,
I'm
jinsi
doing
gani tutafanya.
modernization into what I can do.
Nilipoipeleka ile ripoti
When I
chuoni,
send to the
wakaikubali.
report, the
Wakaniambia,
university
"Je,
agree,
inayo value addition?"
does it have a value
Nikamwambia,
addition?
value
And I
addition
tell them,
ipo.
yes, there is a value
Kwanza
addition.
tunaweza
First,
kulima.
we can farm.
Tunaweza
Second,
kuuza
we can
ikawa-
sell
ikiwa
when it
mbichi
is
na ikiwa
green
ipo dry.
and when it is
Pia
dried.
tunaweza
We can sell
kutengeneza
it
product mbalimbali.
when we can
ambazo
tell,
ni
add
nzuri.
values into that.
Je, kwa health inafanya nini?
What it can it
Kwa
do
health
on a health
nikamwambia,
basis?
kwetu sisi
I told them in our
itaweza
culture,
kutibu
it
kutokana
we
vipi
can
kutokana
treat
na
us
utamaduni wa Zanzibar.
in our
Hatutumii
traditional
mboga
in
mboga.
Zanzibar. We
Tunapenda
don't use
tested. Na viungo,
vegetables, and we like
herbs
taste.
zina
The
taste.
herbs have taste.
Kwa hiyo
So
wataweza kutumia
the Zanzibari people can use them. That's where my proposal was accepted. How are you
social responsibility.
How can you deal with the social responsibility? How you can help them? I can help them because this will be an employment route. Everyone can employ 10 people to be independent. For example, rosemary, it can be market. It can take out essential oils. It can give out cream. It can give out syrup medicine. It can take out scrub. You can use it for hair oil. So one can produce more than 10 products, and that can employ one person. And there are things for us, we like things which are more organic.
Hapo nikaweza kuambiwa fanya proposal yako. Kwa hiyo nikashukuru nikapata.
Yule pale sigara mwambie.
Yes. Hapo tayari ikawa tayari.
So there it was ready for me to see, to pay all my loans. There's a policy of 5,000 seedlings, 1 million seedlings for 5,000 shillings. We will have 100 million. 100 million, pay the loan. Thanks, the World Vegetable Center, they have been able to be with us until where we are now. So now we are how we can go forward with this to be a sustainable production system, how we can use a little water, we can use a small space, so use a small space with a big profit, because now I have only 20 by 20 meter, and I was able to get 5 million within 6 months. My first customer is Honorable Amina Salum, and my mom, the Queen of Organic.
Dr. Matima.
That's me, that's Dr. Matima, that's the one who is doing verbatim translation. That lady is inspiring me. I support her totally for the students. Dr. Gabriel encouraged us to form a group, so we can form a group. The group is called Zan Organic Hubs, which have 18 members, 3 departments, a nursery department, looking for seeds, soil, compost, how to make compost, and the other things. And the other department is on what is that? This is what is we are doing different things. All this is coming from 1 year. Within 1 year, we have been able to do this regenerative agriculture to reduce costs of production, and we can make it the solution for the Zanzibar people. And we came with the word, with the thinking of revolution in Zanzibar. Herbal revolution in Zanzibar is possible. Organic in Zanzibar is possible, and it is possible because of our tradition and culture of using organic. So our market, 70% is we are using it because we are using salads. Herbs, you can put it in a salad, it's fresh, and you can use them dried. Thank you very, 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 very much.
IFDI imekuja kutibu matatizo ya Zanzibari.
this thing has come
Natamani
to.
sana muendelee
I want you to
kuwepo
continue
Zanzibari,
to be in
muwape
Zanzibar,
nguvu
to,
kubwa,
to give us more
wale
effort.
vijana
AIDI
sasa
needs to be in
wapush
Zanzibar
na
to push
kupush
us and to
Zanzibar
push Zanzibar
ionekane
to be
green
seen
and
green
smell
and smells.
like clothes.
That's what we want, beyond clothes.
Thank you.
Missy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for your gift of a very strong story of courage, resilience, and nutrition. Thank you very much. And it's very clear that you have told a story of a livelihood trajectory, but it really became a story of life and how to overcome, but especially to innovate and bring new solutions. I can't wait to visit your farm. So with that, I also think we are very, very proud. And I want to express our gratitude to be able to work with passionate leader farmers like yourself as change agents, partnering with the researchers, but also partnering with scaling through projects like AIDI. And I think that is a perfect segue to the next speaker, Sieg. We're going to come to you as you will talk to us, tell us a bit more about the regenerative agricultural transition experience in programs like Masagro. We just heard about AIDI that is taking this systems approach to Zanzibar, and it's for sure generating huge passion. So can you talk us a little bit more how we bring the data underpinning to that great passion of transition? Over to you.
Thank you, for that. Is it working?
Yeah.
Yes. So if you'll forgive me, I just want to stand up for a minute because I think Madam Hassan has shown us that we have to stop arguing about what is regenerative agriculture, what is agroecology, what is organic, what is, this technologies that we come up with. We need to listen to farmers. So if you take one thing today, it's that we need to do this upside down. We need to be evidence-based policy, not policy or labels that are picking evidence that supports our opinion. So it's this upside down, the idea of moving from supply-driven, and if you'll forgive me in the front row, I'm going to talk about, as an agronomist, I think often, and I am getting to this point about evidence-based, is that we often fight about labels. We often push a technology. So if I can throw a rope to the front row, and as an agronomist, instead of using evidence, what farmers want, what they actually want, might be business, post-harvest, might be value add. Instead, we just push our favorite technology, and you push on that string, and what happens? It just bunches up. Instead, if I can give you the string again, and you can pull it, then we start to see something that adds value. So we need this evidence base, and we're very fortunate that there has been an investment by Rockefeller now that we're talking about today in what is the evidence base on what are farmers actually doing. So we start to think, instead of arguing about is it regenerative ag or agroecology, what are farmers doing? So my boss, Dr. Govertz, over 10 years ago came up with this idea of innovation. So that's the other thing I want you to think about. Upside down, but what is the institutional innovations out there? So through hub networks, Mas Agro in Mexico has more than 12,000 plots where we followed farmers like Madam Hassan and seen what they're doing. So hundreds of data points per plot to see what's happening over time. What are the trajectories? What are farmers trying? So through public-private partnerships in this institutional innovation of Mas Agro, farmers have been supported for sustainable sourcing, been supported to try conservation agriculture. But what have they actually done? That's the exciting part, this evidence-based, to find out what does regenerative agriculture look like in the 9 different agroecologies that Mas Agro has around Mexico. So what do you think? Is it the conservation agriculture, the soil health that we heard earlier today? Often it looks like we don't have all the data evidence, but we are going to be analyzing it. And sometimes it seems to be biopesticides. Farmers are really, really interested in looking at different types of biofertilizers and pesticides. So maybe we need to be thinking more about that as a demand-driven. Maybe it's more about sustainable sourcing. So some farmers are looking, some widow somewhere is trying to grow native maize and we're trying to make sure that the biology keeps that new type to her, but maybe a very old type of maize, safe. Other farmers are using conservation agriculture to try direct seeding and protect soil health. So it looks different in main places. So we're just very excited at CIMMYT with our partners, public and private, through this Mas Agro massive data set to be able to look at what does regenerative agriculture look like. So the first thing is what are farmers trying? Farmers' voice is so important. Second thing is then what are the impacts? So instead of saying is this regenerative agriculture or not, what is the outcome? Is it more environmentally friendly? Once you have that massive data set and analysis, you can see, is it more gender equal? Is it more about just transitions? Where is it more just? Where do we need to maybe have more crop diversity? Instead of saying you must do crop diversity, maybe somewhere else it looks like a lot of maize, but diverse maize. So we want to see what works where. So it's evidence-based, data systems, and most of all, farmers' voice. So we're very much looking forward to this opportunity with Mas Agro. We have, obviously, in Africa, many opportunities like AID, which is this delivery with a difference, accelerated delivery with a difference, with USAID has invested in, which we are very grateful for, and supporting farmers like her. So I think on this journey for farmer voice, for institutional innovations, for turning upside down our research and development so that it is evidence-based policy and evidence-based outcomes, I think you all who showed up today are really important partners in that, and we really look forward to working together with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, this was to wake you up, if that was still necessary. Thanks. And with that, imagine the next panel, we're all going to be standing on our head, because upside down is for sure the message Seek wanted to transmit. And definitely also farmer voice. We have discussed, Your Excellency, the need for evidence-based policymaker, and you are a mover and a shaker. So we would like to hear from you how you have done that in reality. Your country is open for business, but you're especially doing that for the agricultural sector. We want to hear from you.
Thank you very much. Am I audible? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. And a big congratulations to our sister there for the progress and the achievement that she has attained in her business. I know it's not a small task, as she put it. But as a government employee, and I'm in charge of spearheading policy and policy formulation and planning as well. I'm a director of planning and policy in the Ministry of Agriculture in Zambia. I'll take the perspective of government. I think you're all aware that our governments, especially the Ministry of Agriculture, have the mandate to ensure that there's food, they attain the country's food and nutritional security of our people. And governments generally play a facilitatory role in trying to, through creating a conducive policy and legislative environment that promotes the production of a variety of quality agro-products that will meet the nutritional needs of our people. In the recent past, I think my sister alluded to, there's been a lot of challenges in government attaining that particular mandate. For instance, the issues relating to climate change, the conflict and growing populations, unemployment and increased cost of production have meant that governments have to actually relook at the way they plan in terms of coming up with a policy framework to support the production of goods and services in the agriculture sector that meets the needs of its people. It also means that we have to build, like what the speaker said, the first speaker said, build resilience and sustainability and ensure that there is diversification in the agriculture sector. Now, those are not small tasks because of the challenges that we have. For instance, I'll take the leaf of, just to pick up on one of them, the growing population and also the growing urbanization. Most of our populations are moving into the urban sector to take up jobs, to find jobs, and so forth, and just to look for those lucrative opportunities. But that also has transformed the way we do agriculture. It means that most of the land that is open for agriculture in the urban areas is being taken up for accommodation and other developments on the scene. So it means that a lot more people now are relying on a small section of the population to grow and feed them, to grow food and feed them. For instance, in Zambia, we have a total population of about 19 million, but out of that population of 19 million, only 3.6 million are farmers. That means this small group or category of farmers have to grow enough food to feed the rest of the nation so that the country can be self-sustaining in terms of food and nutritional needs. This also means that government has to up its game in terms of providing efficient and effective support to the farmers so that they're able to grow their food. I think you heard from our sister that going into farming does require some minimum knowledge base, even though you have a passion, but you need to be groomed and held hands in terms of knowledge building so that you're able to produce your food in a more productive, meet the productivity levels as well as the volumes and the quality and the variety that is needed to meet the nutrition and food needs of the people. For that, it means that as governments, we need to change the dynamics in terms of the approach that we take to policy formulation. For us as Zambia, we've embarked on a more aggressive and comprehensive path towards transforming the agriculture sector, especially when it comes to planning and policy making. We are more integrative, we're more comprehensive in our approach. So you find that when it comes to institutional building, institutional approach, we have noted that the aspect of ensuring that we produce food and meet the nutritional needs of our people is a cross-cutting issues, because for us to address the issues of appropriate application of fertilizers and chemicals, address the issues of poor land and water management, and also underdeveloped market linkages, limited access to agro credit, as you heard, funding, poor funding to agriculture-related research, and low uptake of good agriculture practices, among others, requires a multi-sectoral approach and more integration in terms of policy making and coordination in the implementation of the necessary interventions, policy interventions. We also noted that we need to attain the right policy mix, a more balanced approach towards policy setting. So to attain that in terms of the institutional setup, what we are proposing, which is what we are doing in Zambia, to take it in terms of a multi-sector approach, to take a multi-sector approach to policy formulation. This also intends that we have identified the key players in terms of both policy institutions like ministries that we need to work with, and as well as non-stake actors such as the private sector themselves, institutions like yours that do research, and so forth. So we have identified and mapped all these players, and we have also created a platform where we meet with them under what we're calling the Comprehensive Agriculture Transformation Support Program. This is a framework that has brought in place all those players that we need to work with. Under that program also, we are intending to come up with what we call commodity agreements. Now, these commodity agreements have identified different key priority crops that we want to spearhead in terms of production. And using the value chain, we have identified the different interventions that we need to take and who's best placed to actually run and implement those effectively. So under those agreements, we intend to sign agreements with private sector and all the players along the value chain, just so that we know who's responsible to undertake and spearhead certain policy interventions that they are best placed to play with. Under that also, we have the support that we are getting under the PDU, what we're calling the Presidential Delivery Unit. And I think one of the players, one of the people from the crowd listed the aspect of political will and commitment to undertake the transformation that we need. So with us, we have the full support of our president, in that he has created what we're calling the Presidential Delivery Unit. This is not a unit that will override the responsibilities of the different ministries to run and implement the different programs, but simply to try and accelerate the implementation of the different programs. So we have an institutional setup that supports the development of multi-sectoral interventions in the... Oh, okay, sorry. We have a multi-sector approach towards policy formulation with all the players that have come on board to hold hands with us as a ministry, because the different interventions that need to be taken cannot be taken up by the Ministry of Agriculture. But for us to build a resilient and sustained and diversified agriculture sector, we need the interventions and the support of the different... Sorry. Hello? Yes. Hello? Okay. Yeah, we have realized that we need support from other ministries, other players, and other stakeholders within the agriculture sector. The other aspect that we are actually promoting is that we need to build institutional and human capacity to address the different challenges that the agriculture sector is facing in terms of coming up with a more resilient and diversified agriculture sector. The other aspect that also was alluded to is that we also, in the transition phase, we also need to address the need for a well-packaged and broad sensitization and knowledge building beyond the Ministry of Agriculture. And we need to map up the core sector, the core stakeholders for both public and private sector, that and isolate their roles and responsibilities based on their mandates. This will also mean that we need to embrace the local communities and build on their relevant knowledge bases that we can then ride on. For instance, in Zambia, we have we're trying to localize policies, interventions on the soil mapping. Already we have done soil mapping in the Eastern Province, and we are about to embark on the rolling out of this particular exercise into the remaining 9 provinces. Zambia has 10 provinces, and we intend to ensure that this exercise is actually taken up in all the provinces. This also is meant to facilitate the aspect of having soil testing that will inform the required chemical and fertilizer application. At the moment, we are actually through what we're calling the FISIP, which is an input support program that is run by the government. We have a blanket application of fertilizers, meaning that we give each farmer that is benefiting from that particular program 6 bags of fertilizer, 4 basal and 4 top dressing, which is actually uniform. But we have realized that in other areas within the country, we don't need to apply fertilizers, and that has meant that we're doing more damage to the soils as opposed to rebuilding and ensuring that there is proper management of the soil resource. So with the mapping that we are doing, we intend to be more specific in terms of what chemicals are required for which particular area. And we're working with the locals as well to ensure that we build in the local knowledge base that is there. We are also, we have a program that is also dealing with agroforest, which is the Integrated Land Management Project, which is carried out through the 2 other ministries, the Ministry of Lands and also the Ministry of Green Economy. This is a community-based intervention, so we build on the knowledge that the locals have to try and manage, promote management, proper management of forest reserves, and also have integrated agriculture being done. We are also promoting tree crops that our farmers should also embark on tree crop cultivation to try and manage the soils better and also ensure that the water catchment areas are protected. Under extension services, we are embarking on training the extension service providers on conservation farming. We've been doing that for a number of years, but we have realized that the uptake of knowledge by the farmers is quite low or slow. And so we would want to ramp up. And just last week, we had a team of service providers, extension service providers from 5 provinces that were trained through that using the expertise from different institutions within the region, as well as support from the World Bank. This week, again, we have taken up the training for 5 more provinces, and we hope with that then we can spearhead the issues relating to crop diversification and other facets. We also have, we're putting together a national crop diversification strategy, which we hope will support the crop rotation as well as tree crop farming within our sector. Under irrigation, we are actually embarking on coming up with a irrigation master plan and irrigation guidelines that are aimed at increasing area under irrigation in agriculture. We have increasingly noted that most of our farmers who are small-scale farmers rely on rain-fed farming, but this is not sustainable if we have to increase the area under irrigation and also the volumes that we produce to feed the extra people that are not engaged in farming. So using this master plan, we also will ensure that the natural water bodies are protected and also the environment. And it will also allow us to have more crops produced within the year as opposed to annual production of certain crops like grain and soybean. We also
Madam,
believe
if we
that
can start wrapping up, please.
okay, yes, I'm almost done. We also believe that in the transition phase, we need to create databases and monitoring system that will enable us to report for results and also convince farmers to adopt the new practices in farming, the more sustainable the more sustainable practices in farming, but also increase investment in farming in the sector as well. Lastly but not least, under institutional framework, we also believe that there is need for investment, increased investment in applied research. For instance, in Zambia, we are doing tests. We're carrying out tests and trials for seed varieties that will respond to drought and diseases. For instance, we've had a problem with armyworms, and so we have come up with varieties that will be able to withstand that particular issue. Under marketing, we are talking about reviewing legislation and policies that will guide marketing of both inputs, supply, and also marketing chains for specific products. We are carrying out a Fertilizer Act review that will ensure that we make room for other distribution of other and supply of other varieties of fertilizer and chemicals. We also want to open up the production of fertilizer to private sector that will be able to ensure that there's more competition and the price of the commodity comes down. We are also looking at strengthening the agro-market information system so that we'll be able to collect, process, analyze, and disseminate key data on crops that are grown under regenerative and conservation agriculture. We also believe that we also need to work on markets beyond the national setup so that we are able to export products that are grown under different environments. Lastly but not least, on the policy changes that need to be looked at in the transition, we again reiterate that there is need for a demonstrated commitment and political will by way of policy consistency and also increased allocation of finances and other resources to core areas in agriculture. We also think that there is need for government and other sectors to be more consultative throughout the process to ensure that there is a larger buy-in from everybody in the sector. I submit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam. And this was an impressive testimonial of evidence-based policy making that has to be farmer-centered, multi-stakeholder, public-private partnerships, and especially turning the passion of women farmers into the desired outcomes. I want to congratulate you to take this, that you have been able to take this effort all up to the office of the President, and that you have shown us a great example of what can be done. With that, I would like to give the word to Dr. Roy from the Rockefeller Foundation. You have been part of an institutional transformation in the foundation itself and beyond towards a deep systems transformation. So over to you.
Is this working? Yes, great. Thank you, Brahm, and everybody here. You know, the whole area of regenerative agriculture has really come out of a lot of some initial analysis we did with looking at the entire food system. And if you do a true cost accounting, you really realize we've created food systems that destroy economic value. And who wants to be part of a food system that actually destroys value? How do we need a fundamental transformation, because not only have we created this food system that is not serving people and it's not serving the planet, but it's also, we're facing the existential crisis of climate change. And so we really believe the regenerative movement can be transformative if we do it right. And that means defining it in a way that allows for accountability and real action, and then implementing it in specific places. So the Rockefeller Foundation is really doing three things. One is we're trying to create a global consensus around what regenerative agriculture actually means. 60% of companies right now claim that they are regenerative, but less than half of them even define what that means. So everybody's using regenerative in whatever way they want. And we think that's going to lose the ability to create the transformation if we aren't clear. And so we're really trying to help a networks of networks to come up with what are the principles, what are the outcomes, and then allow the practices to be very location specific. So we really want an outcome definition of regenerative agriculture based on principles that allow you to adapt it to local situations. It can't be a practice base because every place is different, as everybody's been saying. So our current hypothesis is that the key outcomes really at a landscape level and farm level are biophysical, they're soil health, biodiversity, water quality, 3. And then at the social economic, equity, farmer well-being, and system productivity. You need to do all of those things at the same time to really regenerate the system. You can't just focus on soil health, which is what a lot of people want to just do, because then you can get a regenerative system that relies on slave labor or that destroys farmer well-being. That doesn't make sense. We need a regenerative system that really addresses all of those things. And as my panelists have said, then the second thing we're very interested in is the research and evidence. At the end of the day, this has to be translated into practices that make sense for the cropping system, for the landscape. And that's going to take research. And we think there's a lot of research already out there. There's a lot of experience. We need to mine that and then identify the gaps, as was mentioned. And then finally, this is going to cost money. We need to help farmers transition. And so what are the sort of funding facilities that can enable that transition to a more regenerative system? So those are the three things, Bram, that we're trying to work on. And we got to do that because I think we're facing incredible challenges in the next 10 to 20 years. Probably the greatest challenges humanity has ever faced. And for us to do business as usual is only going to create pain and suffering for everyone. So let's take this, let's move this forward in a way that's real and means real differences for the farmers that we're serving and working with. So with that, I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, and a very strong message that we're facing the greatest challenge humanity probably has faced. And it starts by a food system that today destroys value and that we need to shift. And one way to do it, or a way to do it, is to look at universal principles, but decentralized and very different practices on the ground. And I'm sure our next speaker, Professor Alex Awiti, has a bit thought-provoking things to say after having listened to this really full, almost value chain from science, farmer practice, policy making, and a clear world vision. Alex, over to you.
Thanks, Bram. I'm just going to follow from where Roy just stopped. And can you hear me? It's on. So I'm just going to follow from where Roy left and add that the true test of fitness of a regenerative system must deliver things. The first one, it must deliver food and nutrition security. And the second one is it must generate credible, believable well-being outcomes for households. And it must be carbon negative. So if it doesn't meet those three things, then let's just close this discussion and go home. And as Bram said, when he made his opening remarks, he said we can and must do better. And he also said that we we are pushing against time, and we need a mental shift. We need a fundamental paradigm shift. We need to change our mental models. So I want to focus my brief intervention on the African context, because that's where we are. And I want to say that what we're seeing in Africa is a self-reinforcing low nutrient trap. Okay? We have soils that don't respond to existing input regimes. And it's interesting that we're sitting here, the two institutions that were basically the pioneers of the Green Revolution, Rockefeller and Ford Foundation put in the money. Norman Borlaug was working for CIMMYT. Okay? A lot has changed since then. And the fundamental assumptions of those input models was wrong. At least it doesn't work for an African context. And I'm going back to Bram's point, is that we need to change our mental models. We need to change our mental models from an input-based system to a process-based system. That's at the heart of regenerative agriculture. We must resuscitate, strengthen, enhance the biology and ecological infrastructure of the soils to do what they're supposed to do. And the reason I say this is that African soils have some inherent troubling incapacities. These soils are very low in organic carbon inherently. They are very prone to secondary acidification from all kinds of things, especially addition of the diammonium phosphates, the nitrogen and phosphorus NPK fertilizer, and the calcium ammonium nitrate that we use for top dressing. These soils also have the worst nutrient retention, nutrient release capabilities because they have very low cation exchange capacity. The input model that we produce right now basically exacerbates these problems and creates this vicious nutrient trap. We've got to get out of this trap. I'm not saying we don't need fertilizer, but we need to change the formulation and the fundamental dynamics of the input structure. So we need fertilizers to drive, in a quick format, the delivery of the fundamental energies that the soil needs, which is nitrogen. We need at the same time to create an ecological, biological process that resuscitates the base that plants use to transact business with microbes in the soil, which is carbon. So this is not that complicated. It is not that complicated. So what we need, we have what IITA has been pushing for a very long time, which is integrated soil fertility management. This is a very low-tech, old technology that is just as inefficient as the fertilizer model in terms of creating nutrients and making them available to the soil. It's out of sync with the plant's plan. The plant is sitting there, and manure is still thinking about when to release the nitrogen or the potassium or the phosphorus, and the plant is basically starving. We have a fertilizer input model that hemorrhages nutrients very quickly. We basically just harvest 10 to 30% of nutrients. So it means that 7 to 30% or 90% of the nutrients we put in the soil just goes, volatilization, leaching, and erosion. So this is a really stupid system that we've been subsisting in for a very long time. And guess what? Look at the outcomes. African soils, basically, and Pascal is sitting here, some of the work that he did with Chris Barrett, shows that there is an asymptotic kind of Liebig response curve with soil organic carbon. The limiting factor. This is what farmers are seeing in the field. In Malawi and Zambia, it's acidity. These create these enormous gaps between what farmers are doing with fertilizer and the yield that they're getting. In central Kenya, we know that the soils that are kind of low potential have very low carbon. The maximum you can get, even if you stick 100 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, is 2 tons per hectare. In the soils that have very high organic carbon, you can get up to 5 tons per hectare for 25 kilograms of nitrogen. And guess what? Our farmers, when they grow maize even at 1 ton, they extract 28 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare from the field. Resources that are not there. So you've got a net mining operation that happens in these fields. We've got to stop this chemical welfare that we've created for soils. Soils can do their job. So why do we hate social welfare in our societies, and yet we subject plants and soils to this nonsensical chemical welfare regime? So what we need to do is a balanced transition, and this is where the trade-offs come in. How do we stay on this curve of an integrated utilization of more efficient integrated soil fertility management? Now we have a lot of interesting new innovation that Rockefeller has been investing in, like level thrust, for example. ECP has been doing a lot of this work. We have compost tea. We have manure tea. We have much more efficient models of delivering IITA von Lao's ISFN. much more efficient than this rudimentary kind of basic stuff. Because again, one of the things that we run into is that farmers cannot get organic resources. We can now create a scalable commercial model that can deliver these systems much more efficiently. And biochar is another exciting soil conditioner that also creates this very enabling virtuous cycle of resources within the farm system. I work for the World Agroforestry Center. We can create short rotation coppicing trees that can create biochars very sustainably. There's a lot of material out there in the field with coffee husks, with rice straw, wheat straw, coffee waste. We have coconut waste, macadamia nuts waste, for example, that can generate a new commercial dynamic to basically creating this integrated soil fertility management options. I think what is important about these compost teas and manure teas is that you can inject microbes in a much more efficient way into the field. And this is the microbes that then you need, the plant growth promoting rhizobacteria, for example, that are very important to creating the ability of the plants to be resistant to diseases. But one of the other things that is also exciting, and this is a kind of interesting on the carbon negative side, biochar can deliver up to 5 gigatons of carbon per hectare per year. And we need to scrub 10 gigatons of carbon out of the atmosphere for us to even stay under the 2 degrees Celsius. So here's a potential solution that if we reimagine agriculture, agriculture will check these 3 boxes. It will basically deliver sufficient food and nutrition security. You create fundamental well-being outcomes for farmers, and it can be carbon negative. So let me end by saying, and this is work that has been done by Chris Barrett, Brent Swallow, colleagues of mine at ICRAF. They talked about fractal poverty traps. Paul Collier has also talked about the bottom billion. Darren Ashemoglu has also talked about why nations fail. These vicious poverty traps that are resource-based are the reason why Africans are poor. We cannot get Africans out of poverty when 60 to 70% of them subsist on the land when these lands are not productive. So let's get our act together and create those virtuous cycles through regenerative agriculture and new innovations to some of the existing technology to give farmers the first rung on the ladder to get out of these poverty traps. And it starts with fixing food production systems. And we can then go ahead and create more innovative channels to bring farmers into the carbon markets through carbon dioxide removal techniques that use biochar, for instance, and other soil amendment techniques. So I'll shut up.
Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you very much, Alex. And I hear that you're calling for to create the evidence to get out of the nutrition and poverty trap. With that, we have a few more minutes before wrapping up this session. We still have to do a last Slido. We can, we're going to skip the commercial, so we can do the Slido, but I want to give some time for at least 2 questions. And I see 1 hand, 2 hands, okay, a few hands, so let's not lose more time. If you can say your name, say your question, and who you direct it to.
My name is Victorious Kamuntu. I work with the cashew sector in Tanzania. I want to give evidence based in the cashew sector. When we support farmers in the cashew sector, especially by adding value, support small farmers adding value instead of selling raw cashew nuts would increase the income of these farmers. Challenges of these farmers that we sell they export raw cashew nuts. That means we have some of the base within our organization. We support small farmers going to the market. Through partnership and support these farmers is to go to them to see, they show you the evidence as they have been shown as entrepreneur. They have real case rather than coming some lot of academicians. We are told to academicians rather than evidence go to the farmers. Farmers have real evidence that they can give and we solve their problems.
Thank you very much. My name is Martin Majuma. I'm the chair for Tanzania Organic Agriculture Movement. I'm so happy hearing these 2 gentlemen here, and I hope this meeting this time will come out with a different way. My feeling throughout the 2 or 3 days has been how we can get to the last mile to the same things that are causing issues to our farmers. We are still talking about making fertilizer, chemical fertilizer, closer, hitting the last mile, giving it to them, get it there, liming the soil which have destroyed and continue to destroy more soil. And we've been talking about, yes, this should be a transition, but if there are farmers who are ready for that transition, let's support them. The organization, do you see anything within the ministry? Not even a desk. And we have been shouting like this for the last 5 years. Guys, there are farmers, they don't want to use chemical because they have already realized the issues around that. Can you allow them a space? Can you support them? Training. Manamisi want to come to our institute in Zanzibar for training. And for 2 weeks, in-house training, it cost her 800,000 shillings. Where will she get that 800,000 shillings? Who is supporting that kind of training? When you go to our own training institute in the government, they say that is crap. There will be no productivity. We'll go hungry. Can we now really help us to remove that statistics of the 2050 that will be all dead if we don't put more fertilizer, if we don't go 100 kilograms instead of the 4 kilograms we have? Can we remove that crap and start saying, if you maintain your soil to be productive continuously, like what Manamis is telling, it's a small piece, but if you manage it, biochar, teas, all these are there. But they have never been given the right support to be distributed to the people. We have young people here, Hakika Fertilizer, these guys, in Arusha, in Iringa, in Arusha, everywhere. These people here making biopesticide. Who is supporting them? We're still bringing in chemicals. We are supporting these people. I told them in the last session, sorry guys, your business is dying, I know, and that is why now you are very desperate to make sure that it doesn't die. Please, gentlemen, help us. Not to kill them, let them find a different way to get a business. Let them turn around and start buying the product that are being produced from the sustainable production system and all that. I am so worried in the next year, Abuja, whatever fertilizer talk that we will hear again, you are putting millions again in support the government to subsidize something that is killing us. Thank you.
Thank you. And so I'm going to give one last voice under one condition. It has to be a question. So it's a question, then you get that question.
Thank you, Bram. I have a question for Rockefeller and Madam from especially on the research evidence. Rockefeller said it is cost and it needs funds. So just I want to know how far we are in the investment on the research evidence, especially in terms of the breeding part, because also if we go to the variety, which is water use efficiency and whatever, so can you collaborate or can you participate in generative agriculture? So I want to know how far we are in terms of government and Rockefeller.
Thank you. I have a question also. My name is
one sentence.
Yeah. My name is Neva Zakea. I'm a biotechnologist. We have talked a lot about regenerative agriculture. So the main issue here is investment on microbial biotechnology. So in this area, microbes are playing a greater role. Nutrient recycling, decomposition of organic matter, whatever we are talking here is done by microbes. I have a product here that is a microbial biocontrol. So there is no support on this. We are talking about knowledge gap. Farmers are not aware of this biotechnology. So where are the support for microbial biotechnology that will enhance sustainable food production?
Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask Seek to take that question.
Very quick, I'm from Pakistan, traveled all the way for this seminar. Just one question, one sentence question. It's in Green Revolution, initially, when it was introduced, small farmers lagged behind. In this regenerative agriculture, we are working with more than 160,000 farmers in Pakistan. Small farmers are now in a position to lead. but they need...
Can you come to your question,
Yeah,
please?
the question is how the Rockefeller and other organizations can focus on the small farmers movements so that they can benefit from regenerative agriculture.
Thank you.
And our experience with CIMMYT on access to new and seed varieties for these small farmers is helping them a lot to get more sort of production, and their systems are getting better. Please do focus on how we can focus more on small farmers.
Thank you so much. With that, we're going to close the Q&A session. So I'm going to ask Honorable Representative Zambia to answer the first question. Roy, if you can take the third question, and then for the second question, we go to Sieg. I do have a challenge for you. We only have 1 minute, so that means, and I'm going to do wrong math, that means 30 seconds for each, and then we're already over time. So over to you.
I hope this time it works. Okay, thank you very much. I think that was a very good question. In terms of research, like I said, most of the times government, I've got a flu, so I think I'm coming out of the phone. Hello? Yeah, like I said, government has got competing needs, and research mostly is not very well funded, okay? But for Zambia, we've done a number of trials. We've got a number of crops that we've prioritized. Say, for example, soybean, maize, and wheat as well, because those are products that we want to promote. So we have trials being undertaken by our research institution in partnership with the various private sector institutions. So we want to use those trials to address, the issues of disease, for example, the pests. Instead of farmers using sprays and pesticides, like what she has said, would want to come up with a variety that is resistant to those kinds of pests and diseases. So in that way, we're going to reduce the usage of chemicals, okay? And then I think that's it.
That's it. Thank you, Madam Lewa. And with that, we go to Seek for the second question.
So thank you. I think at CIMMYT we talk about taking it to the farmer, but I think today we're talking about putting it on its head and listening to the farmer. So instead of bringing we heard about amazing technologies, microbial stimulants, biochar, and value-added opportunities, but really we need to listen to farmers and see what works where. And this new evidence-based investment by Rockefeller we're very grateful for. We'll be learning together about regenerative agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Seek. And for the third question, over to you, Roy.
Just to reinforce, we can't be using technologies of 60 years ago. We've learned. We need to really focus on what creates soil health and health for farmers. And I'll just leave it at that. I mean, there's so much to talk there.
Thank you so much. There's clearly more to say and to learn. So in order to continue this conversation, I'm going to ask you one last task. Take out your phones. Go to the Slido that you should already have open. I am not sure if it's on the screen right now because our screens are out. So we are good to go. What are you taking home from this session? So the question is, what learnings, what key findings are you taking home from this session? And we want those questions, those take-home messages to continue this conversation. So what learnings are you taking home from this session? While you are responding, I want to take a quick moment to thank Madam Nlewa for sharing her experience. I want to thank Dr. Snap for sharing the future project. I, of course, want to thank Professor Alex Awiti for his thought-provoking comments. Of course, Hambulu, thanks, and Dr. Hambulu Ngoma for your contribution to this panel, and thank you, Roy, for Dr. Steiner for sharing the view of the Rockefeller Foundation that we need to go to the future. And last, the star of this panel, allow me to thank you, Madam Hassan, as the farmer that puts it to work. So with that, a round of applause for an outstanding panel, and as always, The good of the panel were the panelists. The moderation and going over time, blame it on me. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.